First of all, thank you for doing this. I'm a huge fan of the series. This season, after 5 seasons, usually that's when you start to say, okay, it's tail off time, and
Yeah.
you just hope that it's somewhat as good as it used to be. And I think this is the best season yet.
Wow, thank you so much for saying that. And I'm so happy you liked it.
So what was it about your character that interested you most? And why did you want to take her on?
hmm You know, Fargo has always been defined by these central and iconic female cops. But I really felt when I got the audition and I read the first two scripts that Indra was so different from all of them. First of all, she was specifically written to be played by an Indian American actress, which I thought was so incredible that Noah had that, just created that opportunity when it could have been played by anybody. And I just thought there's such an interesting dynamic between Dot and Indra and even Lorraine, having these three women who are all so different interacting with each other and eventually helping each other out. And that to me was really exciting, just to see these three strong women who are all so different, but on a similar journey.
And were you a fan of the series before you took on the role, or the role was offered?
When the role was offered to me, yes, but when I got the audition, I had never seen Fargo, so I quickly watched as much of it as I could, and then I became a huge fan, and then I became obsessed with getting the role and wrote Noah a letter telling him that he had to cast me. And so yes and no.
No, it's pretty amazing though. Rarely do you get something offered to you that's good. Every single day I get things offered in my email. And I'm like, this is garbage. But to get something
Yeah.
offered to you, a role, and then to have the luxury of watching Fargo and going, I mean, it must have blown your mind. Like, okay, I'm in.
Oh
Where do
yeah.
I sign up?
That's exactly what happened. Was first of all, I read the scripts and I was like, wow, this writing there's nothing like it. And then I watched the movie and I watched I think like the first season, I watched it in 2 days. And I was like, I have to be a part of this. There's no way I can't do this.
It's just a wonderful series from day one. From the first episode, I was like, I was a fan of the film myself, and I'm like, I
Yeah.
questioned, why are we making a series? Why are we doing
Yeah.
this? And then I instantly, episode one, I'm like, okay, give me as many episodes as you can. I want more.
Yeah.
So this season is a tale of two Indiras. Who is Indira when we first meet her?
She is, I think she became a cop because it was her dream job and she always wanted to serve and protect. That was genuinely her mission and what made her want to go into law enforcement. But I think when we first meet her, and I was speaking with somebody else about this. I think that we meet her kind of where we leave Marge Gunderson at the end of the movie. It's almost like that rosy-eyed vision of what it's like to work in law enforcement. You have a little bit of a reality check. And I think Indra's already had that reality check many times, especially being a woman of color and having a different experience in the industry. And so I think that she's a bit disillusioned when we meet her, and not only by the job, but compounded with the fact that her life is falling apart, her personal life, which is another reason I was so drawn to the character, because you don't just see her as a police officer, which is sometimes what happens, not just in Fargo, but in general, when you see cop characters, you don't really get to see what their personal life is like, especially women. And I thought that was such a fascinating thing to explore.
And then fast forward to the end of the series. Who is she then? Because it's two very, very different people. Maybe
Yeah.
there's the parts of her are there, but what's on the what is the now leading part of her is completely different than what we saw at first.
Well, she has money at the end of the season. She's got money because she's working for Lorraine. And that, I mean, it sounds funny, but it makes a huge difference. And when for anybody who knows what it's like to be struggling and to be in debt, and then to be offered an opportunity to pull you out of it, and then to, even if it's not something that you envision doing, she's empowered. She's left Lars, she's left her deadbeat husband. She's working for a very powerful woman who, maybe she doesn't agree with her about everything, but they see a lot of each other in themselves. And so I think she's I don't think it's like the end of the story for her. I think it's the beginning of the story for her. And I think it would be really incredible just to know what would happen, what would be her life in even a year from then. Would she still be working for Lorraine? I'm not sure, but I think she's definitely on a path to salvation.
She's so strong and she's a smart woman. But why doesn't she kick her husband out earlier? Why doesn't that, what keeps her tied to that relationship?
That was something I really grappled with throughout shooting and when reading the scripts, like, why is she not leaving him? Why is she staying with him? But that's the question of life. I mean, how many people do we know in our own lives that are in these relationships and from the outside, you cannot for the life of you understand why these people are together and why one person stays, but it happens. And I think that's why it was so important to show the storyline because it's so realistic. And I think that, I'm sure it wasn't always bad for them. I'm sure there was a time where they were in love and, they were probably on equal ground when it came to their careers. And I don't think that Indra is somebody who likes to fail. I think she is which is why it's also hard for her to make the decision to work for Lorraine because she feels like a failure and she feels like she's failed her career, she's failed her marriage, and that's very difficult for her. And it's scary. Change is scary. So I think these are all the reasons why it's taken her a while to get there, but she does it.
And when that change happens, how, it seems like an instant change in her. What does that unleash? What does that, open her up to?
What you mean when she leaves him?
Yes.
I think it's a moment of enlightenment for her. I think that it's that moment when she's like, oh my God, what am I doing? Why am I still in this marriage? And thank you, Lars, for having this woman in our bedroom so that I could have this moment of realization. And I think, and that's the same day when she goes and tells Lorraine, I want to work for you. I think it's that day that she decides it's the end of her old life and the beginning of her new life.
It's like an anchor that she's been dragging around. And then once it's released, she's able to sail. She's been moving slowly, but just stuck.
Yeah, and I think all of us have moments like that in our lives, and I think it's so realistic, and yeah, it was so exciting to play that moment.
And her relationship with Lorraine is one that I didn't expect, and then it kind of when it happened, like, wow, this really opens her up to some a different character than we'd seen in the
Yeah.
earlier episodes. What
Mhm.
does Lorraine see in her?
I think Lorraine sees a woman who reminds herself of herself. Obviously they're very different, but I think Lorraine sees that Indra is somebody who's been underestimated, who's had to fight very hard to be where she is, and who doesn't go down without a fight. And that's exactly who Lorraine is. And I think that's what impresses her about her. And she realizes that she needs her because, in the beginning, Lorraine says to her, what is your function? But to serve people like us. And besides that, you're useless. And then she realizes, oh no, this woman's she's brilliant and she's a fighter and she's a lot more than what I originally thought. So I think it's a really great moment when Lorraine sees that in her and tells her she wants her to work for her.
And if Lorraine doesn't see that in her, what are her next steps? Where does she go from there?
If Lorraine doesn't offer her that job?
Yes.
Well, that's a good question. I think she still would have left Lars in that moment when she found. I think it was just the straw that broke the camel's back when she found the woman in her bedroom. But when it comes to work, I'm not sure. I think she might have stayed in her career because until she had another opportunity because she doesn't really have another option. Lorraine really is her only option. And it's a great option because it gives her what she needs, which is financial freedom.
And do you have favorite qualities of Indira?
Oh yeah, so many. I think she's so brave. I think I had the amazing opportunity to shadow a female cop when I was working on building the character. And And they're just a whole different level. When I say bravery, it's a whole different level of bravery. I mean, you're literally putting your life on the line every single time you get in your car, and every single time your shift starts. You don't know if you're just going to be pulling people over for speeding, or if you're on your way to a really dangerous situation. And what I love about Indra is that she is so unafraid of the work. She's afraid of leaving her husband, but she's not afraid of the work. You know, she'll walk into a house where there's been a crime with no fear. And I think that that's so not me. So I'm very impressed by that.
The amazing thing is too, is you mentioned a speeding ticket. A speeding ticket can often be just as dangerous. And
True.
when you're going into a big situation, you know it. But with those, you're still don't know who's behind that wheel. And it's I know a lot of law enforcement.
You're so right. Actually, and when I was on that shift shadowing the cop that I got to shadow, actually that was the scariest part. We had to pull somebody over, and it wasn't the person behind the wheel that was scary, but it was the way in which we had to just stop on the side of the freeway. I didn't realize how scary that was going to be. And yeah, it was scary.
Yeah, I've unfortunately had a breakdown on the highway, and it is scary as can be. Those cars are whipping right by you, and it's really scary when you're in LA, I'm assuming.
I'm in LA now, yeah.
Yes, New York traffic, they don't care. It's like, even something as simple as a car that has a breakdown is a risk for these people. So
Absolutely, yeah.
My hat goes off to them. In such a great cast, what was it like working with Jennifer Jason Leigh and Juno?
I feel like it was a dream. Like I can't even believe that it happened in real life, to be honest. I had been such a fan of both of theirs for so long, and was very intimidated, to be honest, going into it when I found out that I'd be working with them, especially because I had so many scenes that were just, one-on-one scenes with each of them. But both of them are just the loveliest human beings. Jennifer and I had a lot of scenes together, and many opportunities in between shooting. It would just be me and her. And if we were shooting in the Lion House, for example, like it would just be me and her in a bedroom, just sitting on the bed and talking about life. And to me, those were my favorite parts of shooting. I learned so much from her, and her and I are actually both very alike in a lot of ways. And Juno too. I mean, she's a magnificent human being.
And let's get into the accent. How much of a challenge was that for you? Was it more fun or more challenge?
It was both. I think, I'm an actor who loves to do accents, but obviously some are harder than others. The Minnesota accent, I had never heard it before. I got the audition because I'd never seen Fargo before. But I don't know, it came to me actually pretty naturally. Obviously, I worked with a dialect coach, which was so much fun. And if you don't know, it was Liz Hammelstein, who's the original dialect coach who did all the movie. She did the movie and all the previous seasons of Fargo. So that's how they kept the through line with the accent, which was so exciting. And I stayed in the accent throughout the entirety of shooting. So even when I was not on set, even at home with my husband, not Lars, I would be doing my Minnesota accent. And that's what really helped me to make it feel real, because it's hard to go in and out of it.
It's one of those accents, once you try to put it on, that it's addictive. It's tough to stop.
It is. And also the thing with my character is, not just in our installment, but in previous ones also, and in the movie, there's some characters where they're not doing a stereotypical accent, but it's more animated, but and that kind of is what people think of when they think of the Minnesota accent. But for my character, it didn't really make sense to do that because she's very grounded, and of all the characters, I would say that my character is probably the most grounded. And so I didn't want it to come off animated or stereotypical or cartoonish in any way. I just wanted it to feel really real. So that was my goal.
And you kind of touched upon this, but where does she go from here? Because after when the final credits roll, she's in a much different place.
Yeah.
A much different, the path has shifted numerous degrees. So, where do we see her in 5 years?
Yeah. I think in 5 years, she will probably be her own boss. I don't think she'll be working for Lorraine for 5 years. I think maybe she'll head a private security company or something. And maybe she will find a man who's good enough for her, and maybe she won't. Maybe she'll be single. I think that no matter what, I think she's on a way to, I think she's just on a journey to doing what she wants and living on her own terms, which she hasn't done for a very long time.
And do you have a favorite scene that you were in, and also a favorite scene from this season? It doesn't, if in or not, you can.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I think my favorite scene that I was in was one of them, I would say, there's a few, but one of them was my scene with Juno when she comes to when Dot comes to Indra's house to ask her to take care of her daughter. And I just thought it was such a powerful moment between the two characters, these two women who, and it's a scene that you don't typically see in television or in movies, between two very, very different, strong women who are leads in their own, having this connection. It was really emotional, and just getting to do that with Juno was such a privilege. So that's one of my favorite scenes. And other favorite scene from this season, I don't know. I mean, I just really love all the scenes with Gator. I think Joe Keery really killed it. I think he is the opposite of that character in real life, like the total opposite. He's such a sweetheart. And just to see him transform into that character was really, I'm so proud of him. And I really enjoyed watching those scenes, even though he was such an asshole.
You can say that again. So you now have this growing fan base. You know, my daughters know you from Never Have I Ever. And now you have Fargo, 13 and 16.
Oh yeah, they're like the perfect age for Never Have I.
Yeah. So now you have this growing fan base, and it's because Fargo brings some very passionate, very different fans to. How has that journey been for you?
I feel very, very honored and very blessed that I've been able to, first of all, with Never Have I Ever, when I was cast on in that show, I had no idea how significant it was going to be for not just the younger generation, but for the South Asian community and for people all around the world. It came out during COVID, like literally April 2020 was when it came out. So everybody was at home watching it. And overnight, the show just blew up in 190 countries, which is something unique that happens with Netflix shows. And then from then on until season 4, I mean, it was a total cornerstone moment for the South Asian community. And I feel so blessed that I was a part of it, because it was something that not only to be in it, but to have that show that's created so many opportunities for brown people in general. And then just when I go out and people mostly recognize me from that, and it's usually younger people, but also, parents also watch it, people my age watch it. That's kind of what's great about the show, is people of all generations really love it for so many different reasons. But it's a total different, and then the fans that we have for Fargo are obviously, it's a very different audience. And I think it's really cool just to see when someone recognizes me. I'm always like in my head, like, okay, is it going to be Fargo or Never Have I Ever? And I'm almost always right, but sometimes I'm wrong, and that's really funny.
Let's close out with an easy one. 3 words to describe Indira.
Oh, feisty. Jaded. And I don't know. Strong.
They all work. Sounds perfect to me. Well, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for doing this today, and for your work on the series. I really enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing what you do next.
Thank you, Stephen. It was such a pleasure.
Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.